Every single human, child, student is meant to fit together in a hierarchical attachment arrangements of a cascading care. This should be our first question as a teacher, as a student, as a parent, as a grandparent, is how to get the human care delivery system structured and arranged. Are the ones they are depending upon the adults who are responsible for caring for them and about them? If not, we have a non-viable attachment because it is meant for the delivery of care. It should be our dominant focus in parenting and marriage and family and in society at large. Nature will do the work of developing potential, but nature needs us to first hook us up to each other so that caring results. If we look at all the rage today in child mental health, tips for kids, it's all about self-care. We couldn't be more misdirected in terms of emotional health and well-being. Independence is rooted in dependence, in satisfied dependence. That's where its root is. That's the irony. You can't get to independence without going through dependence. These needs, as I said before, don't go away. They're with us for life. This is us. This is what it's meant to be human. We have a fundamental drive for togetherness.
Well, I'm just so delighted that you were able to put this into words, Gordon, because I think it's something we don't have a lot of words for, and especially in a North American culture, and as countries adopt that sort of, entrepreneurial, independent mindset, we don't really value dependence. It's a bit of a dirty word. We don't see the insecurity, as you say, that it creates. We haven't connected the dots. And so it's really important that we do, because we're chasing problems on one end, but not connecting it to the roots. And I think parents who bravely come to this and are willing to look at this really want to get some answers. Okay, well, what is it that I can do? Who is it that I need to be to my child to preserve and hold on and to make sure that dependence infuses the dance that I do with my child? And one of the biggest hopeful messages that you have here, and I'll just end on this, is that it's inside of us already. It's not something we have to grab in the external world.
Right.
That we actually just need to anchor into what is already here. And I hope people really hear that.
But when you get that piece that it's about reading the need, and I think to that I'm so glad you mentioned the child-led, the student-led parenting and teaching. It's a different way. You're coming from a different place where it's child-centered, in that you're looking at what the child needs, and you are taking the initiative to provide for those needs.
And so, of course, eating is not simply a nutritional event. It's a relational event. It's an emotional event. It's how nature tied all of these things together in a beautiful way so that we could get our caretaking across to the people that we love and that they could feel the care. It's a beautiful invitation. Through a behavioral lens, we have taken away the enjoyment and the natural conditions through which our children are meant to unfold as eaters. But how do we get back into that receptivity? How do we bring them to our side? How do we claim our children?
Eating has become divorced from attachment, relationship, togetherness. But attachment, togetherness has become divorced from caring, because it's what caring is about. And it's like those three need to come to all together. And how do I embrace the dependency? And food becomes part of that primordial dance of attachment.
Story allows us to connect to our people. It connects us to the hearts of our people, whoever those people are. It connects the child to a parent to a child to a teacher, a child to a grandparent to their grandchild, us to each other. Stories have the power to connect us at the heart. How do we bring story back into our lives in an intentional way? How do we take it out of the hands of entertainment and social media, technology? Technology can be tools and vehicles for story, but often it pulls us into a different place.
We are storytellers. but what are the stories we're telling? And are we really owning this? And do we use story to care for those that are dependents?
Someone else was asking questions about what kind of movies, what kind of stories in that form. And those are the kind where, you can enter into that story, and it's like I mentioned in the talk, it's like it draws you in, but it also draws you out, and it touches something in you. And that's the piece about being one step removed. It's one step removed, but then you're in it and you're experiencing it without your defenses getting involved and saying, well, that's over the top. You actually allows you a way in, and accessing those tears that can sometimes be building up,
Oh, as I was thinking, well, what should the topic be? What did I really want to talk about? And it was the wisdom of the wisdom of immaturity, so to speak, because you have to start there to get anywhere. And but it was in that context where I thought, oh, you had really given legs to the wisdom of trauma, the wisdom of the stress response, what the brain is trying to do, where we get stuck, the impediments of this. And so I thought, well, this would be good to bring our voices together here.
As Gabor said, they brought me to see you, and I remember that day very, very clearly. That was a turning point in my life, because for the first time I wasn't the problem.
Mm.
I think I've suppressed my sadness at the expense of my anger, and there's such a thing as stuck anger too, and stuck indignation. And there's a lot of reward in our culture, especially our culture today, our online culture, grievance culture.
Yeah.
And grievance is really, I see it as ossified grief. It's the amber inside which the Jurassic bug of grief got trapped.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of saying it, Daniel.
And when it melts, then we get to feel something. And grief is the conveyor belt that takes us from it shouldn't be this way to it is this way.
Yes.
Or it should have been that way to it never was, and it's never gonna be.
Yes.
I've noticed another dynamic as well, where I talk with adults who may have significant physical or mental health issues, addictions, and so on. But yet, when they think of their childhoods, they know that their parents love them, but they don't see where they lost out. And then it takes a few questions to get them to realize that, yes, your parents loved you in that global sense, but you weren't seen, you weren't accepted, you weren't invited the way you were.
There's room to come to some kind of relationship with a flawed existence, our flaws as caregivers, our flaws as care receivers.
One of you said in the book was in Myth of Normal, a culture where nature has become the exception is a culture in trouble. Back to the theme of our day was the wisdom of dependency, the wisdom of nature to take care of us.
Like when you think what nature is trying to do, is trying to take care of us by getting us to take care of each other. So when we have the yearning to get our care through to our partner, to our student, to our child, when we have that yearning, and when you do so, you'll find yourself, warming up, being more generous. Safety will be all important to make it safe to depend. Safety, warmth, and generosity, like as I tried to just speak to very briefly in that diagram about being an alpha provider. These are the things that melt the heart.
Yeah.